Welcome. I'm Romy Newman. I'm president and co-founder of Fairygodboss, and I'm very, very honored to be joined here today by our colleague, Brenda Darden Wilkerson, who's the CEO and president of Anita Borg. We're here to talk about how do we onboard and train and manage in this virtual world. But before we dive in, I think it's essential to acknowledge what's happening around the world right now. The world is not business as usual. We know that there are protests occurring in cities across the country and across the world. From a Fairygodboss perspective, we're an organization dedicated to progress, not stagnation. We fight for equality every day. We know that tough conversations are the most important ones to have. We condemn injustice, discrimination, racism, police brutality, and we stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. We believe inclusivity is vital to affecting real change. And so we'll be talking about that today. So again, very excited to have Brenda Darden Wilkerson joining us. Brenda, you are pioneering thought leader, no question. You focus on the urgent need for intersectional equity in the technology space. You lead Anita Borg as the CEO and president, and you also work as an unwavering advocate for access, opportunity, and social justice. So I can't, for underrepresented communities in general, and especially in technology, and I can't imagine a better person to be talking to here today. Thank you for being with us, Brenda. Brenda, we can't hear you.
Hi, that mute button, boy. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for all the great work that Fairygodboss does. Such a service in all of these times for women, and I'm just so excited to be part of this conversation. We were talking today about our virtual times and how they've affected internships and onboarding of new hires. But before we shift to that topic, I too want to first address the events of the past week, months, and years. AnitaB.org condemns any action that does not promote equity. We have found the police actions and inactions that ended in the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, to name only two, to be reprehensible. We hope that the murderers are punished to the full extent of the law. We denounce Amy Cooper's attempt to weaponize society's racial bias against Christian Cooper. We decry the violence and mayhem we've seen co-opt peaceful protests and believe the sinister forces that perpetrate these acts seek to divide us to bring about the opposite of equity. As a Black mother, I must share these actions bring out every protective instinct in me for my children, for our youth, for our people. While taking actions to ensure the perpetrators' punishment are necessary, they will not bring racial justice until we all demand higher standards. Until those who enjoy privileges that are denied to Black people in America join me and others in our righteous indignation and demand true justice for all, the conditions that foment the terror we've all experienced this week will continue. We must understand that Black people who lived through these racist acts since my grandmother's time are weary to our souls and unable and unwilling to wait for others to catch up. I'm often asked what people who aren't Black can do. There are many resources for you to educate yourselves, and I encourage you to do so. We're here today to discuss internships and onboarding. I implore you to be intentional in your hiring practices because internships are a lever for those who traditionally denied economic equity to begin to find their seats at the table. So I'm so excited to talk more about it.
Thank you, Brenda. That was really inspirational. Thank you for those beautiful words.
Thank you.
So to start, let's dive into, in addition to this current crisis, we are coming off the heels of another crisis, and we're all working in a completely different way. We all work from home now. And so there's a lot that has been put together and published about how as individuals we can do a better job working from home. But let's talk about leadership. How can leadership do a better job managing remotely both generally and then also especially at this very important time. I mean, you could imagine if we could be in a building together, this would be the time that we'd be
Right.
bringing everyone together.
Right.
What can we do virtually to help engage employees,
Right.
promote inclusion, promote discussion of these difficult topics?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much we can do. And I think the first thing we can do is just admit that we said this about COVID, right? There is no playbook for this. Even more, there's no playbook for what's going on now. And, opposite the human connection that you mentioned we would be able to have if we were in the office together, now we must find ways to stay connected with people. And we must think about, as managers, as leaders, what our individual workforce, what our individual team members are dealing with holistically. It's not just about the skills and the projects and the tasks. It's about the place in which that they're doing those things. Are they doing them alone in their homes? Are they, a young person who is sharing a domicile with 5 or 6 people? We actually have one of our team members who is in a co-living space with 13 people, right? That's a different and non-related people, right? So that's a different environment than maybe you or I are in at home with just our family. And so keeping that in mind and how we keep in touch with them and how we communicate with them differently versus just saying, if you're in the office, I'd get to see you, so I don't have to think about these things. We have to be intentionally thoughtful, right? I think especially because there are people who are worried about their loved ones, both for the unrest and also for COVID, we have to be very attentive to, what is going on with you? How are you feeling? How are you addressing the needs that you have in order to be productive? Let's talk about mental health. We just had a webinar this past week where we talk about mental health and encourage people to seek out the mental health support in the ways that make sense to them, because there's not, of course, for any of these things, one size fits all. So I think there's actually an opportunity here, right, for us to step up our EQ to really, lead by example, right? I've tried to be very vulnerable with my teams and help them understand even what I'm addressing as a mother in my other roles, right, and as a leader of our organization. And I think that begets an understanding and an ease with which we shift into this new paradigm that I think is going to be present for a very long time.
Exactly. And so going back to the individual level, one of the things I've been a fan of saying is this is the time to forget your job description, right? Anyone can be a leader. So how would you recommend that anyone and even an intern find a way to be a leader or take on more in this time?
Mm-hmm. 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 I think being a leader has a lot of the characteristics that I just discussed, being in touch with the needs of others, right? So not just being so simply involved with what is it I need to do to get my job done. So even as an intern, I think, in terms of just making the most of that work opportunity, reaching out to others, and even just say, repeating what they heard in a meeting to say, is there a way, did I understand that correctly? Is there something that I could go into more to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing in this situation? Just sort of communicating back to say, here's what I heard. I did hear you. Both about work and maybe some personal things that were going on. One of the things that we do in our organization when we start our meetings is we start off, earlier we were talking about these COVID times, and we were talking about the things, some simple thing that we could address that we're doing differently that sort of personalize what's going on. And what I have found is I've had team members reach out to me and say, I heard you talk about you're building a loom. Tell me more about that. My grandma did that, or I'm interested in doing something else. Then you make a connection, especially in this isolation. Connection is such a thing to address, right? We have to address it, and we have to teach by example our interns and, entry-level folks. Really that leadership skill is reaching out and connecting on a variety of different ways. I think that, in a weird way, we actually have a better opportunity of connecting to people that we didn't see often now than we did before, because we all have the opportunity to be on screen, right? And we see people that maybe would have been sitting in the back of the room. Take that opportunity to reach out, if it's appropriate, chat even during those conversations, and invite the interns to lead breakout sessions as part of your virtual meetings. That will give them the opportunity to step up, show some leadership, be seen by others who would then remember them because they had that opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things we're seeing is there's far less opportunity, or like none, for water cooler conversations, right? Both between peers so that we can catch up about some things that would be helpful to talk to peers about, but also kind of the idea of you getting seen by people at the senior level. That's just, no one sees our work anymore. So how can we replace those ad hoc interactions in this virtual world?
Yeah, so to me, this is another point about one of the things that I'm hoping that we bring out of these trying times is our keeping hold of the amazing lessons that we're learning. I think when we think about the water cooler traditionally, it was happenstance, right? Or you showed up at the same time with people that you normally showed up with. You didn't necessarily hang out with folks that you didn't know. That means that we were not being intentional about reaching out to others. We have an opportunity to be intentional. We can intentionally make water cooler opportunities. We can intentionally connect people throughout the week around business and non-business. We have the ability to say, let's just chat. We did that last week. We're like, let's just get together. I just want to chat. I don't have anything to share necessarily. I just want to see you guys. And I miss you guys. I hope that doing things, excuse me, intentionally right now sets a great example for the young folks coming into the workforce, as internships always did, and lets them see the humanity of our leadership as well as our purpose in whatever our company or organization is doing.
I love your point about EQ. I'd never heard it articulated quite so well, to be aware of what other people's work or priorities or even kind of, you know, X work concerns are. And as I've been talking to more and more companies, I'm definitely hearing that in our virtual world, there's a great deal of anxiety about the where I stand with my manager, right? I used to know if we were sort of in sync because I could actually see that person, the manager might be able to just sort of give a smile. And so I know at the end of the day, I know we didn't have to have a meeting, you know, I'm in good standing. But now, most of the day, we're not working with our manager. So how do you recommend on both sides of that relationship communication and coordination?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it might sound, pretty, a trite suggestion, but I think we use our technology, right? We use those tools that we have to stay connected. We've created additional channels in our Slack that just give people the opportunity to go in and talk about new and different topics that we would have talked about pre-COVID or pre what's going on right now. And it's like going into a room, right? So if we were together, we might go into a room and have a conversation. So we create those rooms where people can go in and have conversations. We create those spaces. So we use the technology. So we use our Slack channel, but which is different from, say email, which still has its place, but it's a way for people to catch up easier on conversations that went before, especially as we make space for people to have varied schedules. If there are people who need to homeschool their kids from 9 to 11 and they can't be part of that conversation, but it's on Slack, they can go back and review it. And so even encouraging people and pointing people to it, sharing things that are resources for each other that are for work, like ways to get trained or ways to have conversations. We created our mentorship program within our membership so that not only could young mentees get support from a mentor, but that those of us who want to continue to have connection with folks not just necessarily within our organization, have the opportunity to reach out. I think some of that frustration that you mentioned earlier about, I don't see my manager, I don't get to talk to my manager, and let's admit it, that managers are really busy right now trying to figure a lot of things out, right?
Some of us are homeschooling also.
That's right, absolutely. And so they don't necessarily not communicate because they're trying not to communicate. And we, of course, being on the receiving end or the non-receiving end of that communication, it's hard to know that, right? But, I would just encourage young folks to reach out and, do their communicating, even when they don't hear back. It's great practice, right? And there's an opportunity there for them to build what we, in the business say is just as important as technical skills, building those social skills, building those soft skills, those personal skills, whatever we want to call them. I think as managers as well, we give young folks an opportunity to practice those skills by giving them writing assignments. Maybe now there should be an internal blog about various things that are going on inside the organization. Give young folks do a better job at that than some of us not so young folks, right? Give them that opportunity and then give them feedback. We have, again, the technology that can do that. Even if we're not, jumping on the phone with them or jumping online with them, we can say, hey, I'm going to, that was great, but let me make some recommendations and teach them how to iterate during this time. I think it's so important.
Absolutely. And I think it sounds like we just have to over communicate. There's just, we can't let anything just be sort of implied or understood more than ever.
You're right. You're so right about that. And I think, I would say to all of the folks, all the managers, all of the folks that have, people who are looking to you for connection and work experience, I just want to, even if you have to set yourself a timer, remind yourself, because we get so focused sometimes and we think we've communicated because all that stuff is going on in our minds. Just make sure that it's regular and it's often, and it's not always about something serious. Absolutely.
And I wonder what you might say to more junior interns or more junior team members right now. I'm hearing a lot of people feel they're ambitious and they feel like there's some degree of career stagnation happening right now.
Yeah.
What can we do to address that as individuals?
Yeah, I think that is so important. And it's one of the reasons why you were beating the drum about organizations that could potentially continue to have internships, that they do them virtually. It's so critical that young people get that experience. We know the positive impact of internships on young graduates' ability to go after great opportunities, and conversely, we know the negative impact when they don't get them. So we're so grateful for companies who come up with ways to make sure that they have those experiences. And so, we want to also build like these new skills. I feel like there's a change in our world that we're not going to ever go back to where we were before. I think if we were waiting for that to happen, that's not going to happen. And so building these skill sets that, teach folks how to roll with the punches, as it were, as I heard growing up. And rolling with the punches here around your technical skills means reaching out and finding those resources that give you the ability to keep yourself sharp, right? So one of the things that we have as part of our new membership platform is we have career coaching, which connects women with coaches who can say to them, here's what you should do or could do right now, right, in your specific space, because we know that we have a whole pathway, right? It doesn't end, but the needs change based upon where you are in it. And so to get some career coaching around from women who've been where you are is just, it's priceless, right? Also to reach out and take opportunities of those online platforms that provide technical skill training so that you can keep your skills sharp or even learn a new skill, right? There's an opportunity if you are indoors, if you have access to internet, if you have access to the time, right? You have access and You know, maybe you're sitting with the 2-year-old in your lap, but you know, and I think the goal there is to not put the pressure on yourself to sit down and do 6 hours worth of training. You know, maybe it's 15 minutes today, maybe it's 45 minutes today. Incrementally give yourself access to other people, to training, to experiences that really are exploding all over the place right now that are available to you.
Yeah, so no matter how much you've got on your plate, still make some time for your own development.
That's right. It's great for your mental health too. You know, we've had to all sort of adjust our goals. You know, high achieving folks who want to drive and get everything done, we've had to adjust that a bit, but that doesn't mean that you can't set yourself some incremental goals so that you are achieving one step at a time. You know, forget about, you know, what things look like 5 years from now. Who knows what that will look like, but you know that there are certain basic skills that you're going to need. Give yourself an opportunity to incrementally build on those. And it just will help your career, but it also will help us as we get through these interesting times.
Right, I agree. I think we've seen a lot of mental health issues, and there is a real value in personal development, career engagement that helps alleviate that issue.
It really does.
So let's talk about virtual onboarding, which in the world of virtual internships certainly is a necessary component. What are some best practices on both sides that you'd recommend?
So I would recommend on the manager employer side, I would recommend a lot of what we've already talked about here. Lots of touch points, right? Lots of opportunities for people to communicate and get ready for coming into the organization. You know, of course, we would have an orientation in person if people were coming on site. What does that orientation look like in terms of being virtual? It should be something that people can start and stop. It should be something that various folks in the organizations can check up on. I highly recommend that there are at least 2 people other than the intern's manager who are tasked with checking in with the intern to make sure that things are completed and that they understand where they are in the journey and how to get there. So that could be a buddy, which is someone who is very close to that person on the career journey. At the sort of the same space, but maybe a couple steps ahead. It should also be a mentor. And even if that mentor, it'd be great if that mentor was internal, but again, reaching out to great resources like yours and our membership in terms of having a mentor and knowing that, you know, I actually tasking that intern with checking in with that mentor so that they have the encouragement that they need. In some cases, we've seen our partner companies as part of the virtual internship make sure that they're shoring up the resources that allow that intern to connect, right? So do you have a hotspot? Do you have the internet connection that you need? Do you have all the tools that you need to do your job? So that's an important part from the company side. From the intern side, it's going to be about, and you know, it's a double-edged sword, what I'm about to say, right? We've always said, you know, speak up, ask questions, find your way to get the information you need to be the best you can be. But again, that's where having that person that's a buddy should make it easier, right? It's not always easy to ask your manager questions that you need answers to, even though the manager might be excited about it. It puts the intern in an interesting position. So having that buddy available that you can reach to makes so much sense to help that intern to find their way. Also, trying to find other opportunities to practice skills outside of the organization that you're going to use inside the organization. And that goes back to finding some of those online training opportunities, or again, seeking that mentorship to say, how can I be the best that I can be? There's nothing like someone to help you along that journey that is so strange for everyone right now to put you at ease.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does occur to me, I'm thinking back to the days when I was an intern, which was like, you know, sometime in the 1800s. And
me too.
But there was so much that I picked up through cultural cues, right? You see how people behave, you see what they wear, you
Right.
see, and that is all not available.
Right. Right.
Or that you can find at least a buddy who you can ask all the most basic questions.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what's the, is this something I send an email or on Slack? Is this something that
Yeah.
is this, would we have a conversation, or is this an email? You know, there's so many
Yeah.
idiosyncrasies of companies and their culture that are hard to pick up virtually.
They really are. They really are. And I, even as, as I suggested earlier, going back and looking at the Slack channel and sort of looking historically at some of the comments there, I think I would ask my buddy, okay, which one of these comments is a great example of how I should communicate? Because we know that, some of the comments are maybe not the best or best for a particular situation. So it's really honing in on those communication skills. I think one other thing I would say about the managers or the folks that are providing the internships, is so important for them to think about, as you mentioned, remembering our internships, right? There were things that later on we probably both said, man, if I wish I had known that. I wish I'd known to ask that while I was there. If I had, or maybe if they had shown me this, it would have set me, ahead. And so really putting yourself, having that empathy, right, for that intern and say, what are the three things if I had learned or heard or been encouraged to do or not to do when I was in my internship that would have set me ahead? What are those things, right? And perhaps that's part of the conversation, one of the over communications that you do when you reach out, let me just share with you, and I don't know if this resonates with you or not, but.
Yeah. That's I think that's for a much more private conversation one day, Brenda. I'll tell you all the things I wish I had known and done differently.
Can't wait, me too. Over wine.
So a couple more questions for you, and then we'll open it up. I see already a few questions coming in, and so please start contributing your questions. We'd love to address them. But before we do, I just, we talked much about this, but I do want to make sure we finish on this note, which is, given the state of unrest in the world, what do you think leaders everywhere should be doing differently to create more inclusive places?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what I'm hoping is happening right now is the excuse of busyness and the excuse of distractions of normalcy are all falling away, right?
Yes.
All of the, well, if we could find any, here's the one that I like the least. This is just going to take time, right? It's like reorienting ourselves to what part do we have in today's reality, and what can I do today, tomorrow, next week, next month? Not that one thing, because that's the other thing. People shouldn't go, I'm just holding my breath because next week will be better and we'll get back to normal. Right. Well, normal wasn't good because normal was not inclusive. Normal was in many ways toxic to women and to underrepresented groups. And so really taking this opportunity to stop and say, what can I do? What did I not notice that I was doing? It's like a self-introspection opportunity of the century. Individuals, teams, organizations, I really call on leaders to be vulnerable and just admit where we've not done what we should have done in the past, how we may have contributed, all of us, yes, to where we are now, and therefore take steps, make goals, write them down. Here's what I'm going to do differently, and be ready to iterate. Most importantly, it's a time for sensitivity like we've never had it before. It's a time to listen and not be the expert. I think that's been a lot of our problems, especially in tech. We think we know everything. This is the time to listen to what other people have to say about why maybe your environment hasn't been conducive to inclusivity, and make some changes. Be ready to make changes. Our very way of life depends on us doing it. And I'm encouraged. I can give you examples of one person who changes the world, just one ordinary person. So we shouldn't discount what each one of us contributes to what might be a problematic situation, but also on an encouraging note, what each one of us can do to flip it the other way and make it positive. So I'm always optimistic that we can do better if we just intentionally do so.
Everyone's actions matter here.
Right.
All right, well, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and take some questions from the audience. So we have somebody who is a new manager and she's struggling with everything. She's trying to homeschool, she's got a new position and it's very stressful. How does she tell her manager that she's at a breaking point, that this is more than she can handle without jeopardizing her role or making them think that they made a bad choice in hiring her?
Yeah, so, that's an interesting tension right now, right? So with everything that's going on, one of the things that I have had to learn, and I am not a good example, have not been a good example, I'm just going to admit it, for myself or my children. I have been a workaholic. I work all the time. So what I've had to learn in this environment is when I get to my breaking point and when I need to take breaks. And it might be frequent breaks during the day where I didn't take any. It might be that on the weekend, I actually take a weekend. And again, that's where it's so important for leaders to lead by example. I wonder if her manager were to say these things to her, would she feel much better about sharing her situation and asking for an adjustment? And I know many times people are in fear of this, especially now that so many people have lost their jobs. They don't want to be the one to appear to be not a team player, right? Yeah. So I'm so grateful for your question. It's a question that I'm sure so many people have. And, without trying to give you an answer that's across the board, what I would say is, your manager and the things that are most important to that person. I think if you speak to them about how you're handling those things, but feeling the pressure and have come with a solution for how you can relieve that pressure, it makes it so much easier. You deserve to contribute to a conversation that makes an adjustment to this new paradigm, right? We're all figuring it out together. And if you don't speak up, then, I'd like to think your manager should understand, we should all understand that we need to do things differently. If you're homeschooling, there has never been a time in our world where all of our children have been at home, ever, right? So that is a normal thing to be able to say, and I've had staff say to me, I need to attend to my children from 9 to 11:30 and, so I can't meet. Those types of adjustments, it brings a suggestion. And, what am I going to say? Okay, because there's nothing for me to do but be understanding. So be ready to share and give the solution that will work for you, right? And that still allows you to do your work, because we know, especially as women, can I be sexist right now? We know how to get work done. We know how to get it done, right? And so giving yourself that space is the right thing to do for you, and it sets an example for everyone in your organization. And so everyone will win.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I'd actually go further to say that in my own experience, when I take on too much, I fail. Right? And you don't want to set yourself up for failure. So you really do have to be realistic about what you can accomplish given what's on your plate and the parameters, because the last thing you want to do is not deliver good work or fail at your tasks because you tried to do too much.
Absolutely. And, I want to speak to your mental and your physical health. We have to listen, our bodies talk, our minds talk, and be able to say, okay, it's like recalibrating. In this new paradigm, what can I do? And how can I contribute in a different way? And then just sharing that, I think is going to be the right way to help everybody do this thing that we call working from home during a pandemic and a crisis.
Yeah. All right, we have somebody who has a great question about internships. So this is a person who's a career changer, not a college student. So could she still benefit from an internship? Would companies look at her for an internship, or should she look for a junior position?
So absolutely, you can benefit from an internship. And the question about will companies look at you for an internship, I say they should, right? I think, again, companies are having to learn new habits. Traditionally, internships go to folks who are in the middle of their education or at the beginning of their career. But it's absolutely a great way for you to figure out, it's like try on for size, this new thing that you're trying to do. There's also this thing called an externship that we used in education, which gave teachers the opportunity to go and work in tech for several months, either during the school year or outside the school year, with absolutely the thought process that I'm learning this skill or I'm trying on something new. So I think you're going to see more and more of that. I think you seek it out. We definitely are sharing with our partner companies, ways of having access to great talent in different ways than they have in the past. I am so excited for women who are going after their second, third, fourth, ninth career in tech, and want to encourage all of you out there because you are bringing such a background of knowledge of work, of leadership, of other subject areas into tech or into your new area. It is definitely an asset for an organization to give you an opportunity to dip your toe in the water in that way. So I highly encourage you as you make your way.
And think about just you can completely increase your earning potential, your promotability, all those things by gaining tech skills. So absolutely worth the effort. Here's a great question. Someone manages a team of 7 and only 3 people ever contribute during meetings. How does he or she get the other 4 people to engage in conversation without putting them on the spot or making them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, so I think there is one of the things that people don't ever want to believe about me is that I'm an introvert. If I didn't have to, I just wouldn't say a word. And so many times people are behave differently in different situations. I mean, even when we did one of our webinars on education in COVID times, one of the things that was actually like a discovery was that some people who wouldn't speak up at all in class and when they were physical would online because they were alone but not alone, right? So sometimes it's about putting people in that different environment that might encourage them to contribute. Now, this is going to sound kind of weird, but give them an assignment. Let them lead the meeting. Give them an opportunity to create that presentation. Give them some research to do that then they have to report on. Give them a specific assignment. I can't tell you how many times I have found the gems in my environment and people who never talked because I gave them a specific assignment that gave them the opportunity, especially if it's around something that they like. Another thing that we've done at our organization is we've put together sort of like this moving group of Brenda's leadership, thought group, right? So various folks in the organization help Brenda think about what she should be thinking about. And I can tell you there was one employee I had never heard open her mouth in that environment where she was helping us think about, the world as we saw it then. And, what Brenda should be talking about just opened up in a way. And I found a new leader. And it was amazing just because I created a different environment than the traditional ones where people may not want to respond. So I highly encourage giving folks an opportunity. And again, that's part of that intentionality, right? Being intentional about reaching people and not putting everybody through the one size fits all, in the way that you want them to contribute.
Yes. So realizing that different context or different kind of tasks can really change that dynamic. All right, we have 3 questions that are sort of interrelated, so I'm going to try to package them together. But the question is all about virtual internships. So number 1, somebody seeing that virtual buddying doesn't seem to work because it's hard to create a bond. And then vice versa, somebody who's going to be a virtual intern saying, how do I establish my connection points without feeling needy? And then and how do I get my work seen as an intern virtually?
Yeah, so all good questions. I think I'm going to hit the second one first. I think if there are opportunities for folks to do the virtual water cooler, like we will do a virtual water cooler every couple of weeks, or some other type of let's just all get together opportunity, make sure you're always there, because there's an opportunity to listen first and get to know people. And then you can find those points of commonality, like, oh, I didn't know you also, I play handball. You play handball? What court do you go to? Now you've got a point of commonality, which, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, we know is one of the things that allows people to be seen and heard in organizations, is when you can make that connection. And the first way to do that is to be in spaces where you can just listen. I think that, you know, I'm hearing that people that need to not be needy. I can relate to that. I think I have in my youth, I tortured myself that, you know, I went on that circle of, oh, should I talk? Maybe I shouldn't. Should I call them? Maybe I shouldn't ask this question. Just ask the question. I promise you, it takes a lot to be a nuisance.
Yes, right.
People want you to ask questions.
And especially they appreciate the situation. And maybe you can keep a list of your questions and ask them all at once, or find a way to organize it a little. Yeah.
So I understand, and that buddy thing, you know, maybe you can even reach out, and if that buddy's not talkative, when you're in that virtual water cooler, virtual, whatever those opportunities that I'm hoping that your organization is offering to you, find yourself a buddy. You know, reach out and chat with that person that's talking about stuff that you have in common. What you went to, you know, Burning Man that summer, I did too, you know, and get in and talk about it and say, hey, you know, I really would appreciate, you know, could we, you know, spend some time together? Could you help me? People generally want to be helpful. You know, so when you ask for help, it's a way people can feel good about giving back something that they can remember that they needed as well. So I understand, I relate to the most bashful person on the planet. But when you push past that, the returns are huge, because most people just want to help you if you ask them.
Excellent. All right. So for our last question, I think this is a powerful question. I appreciate the person who asked it. I'm an executive, and I'm embarrassed to say in the past, I've used the idea that I'm too busy or too distracted as an excuse for not mentoring as much as I should have. Moving forward, how can I be the best use to young women who are looking for mentors?
Oh, you are a gem. You are a gem. You know so much that they would just soak up from you. So present yourself. I'm sure that if you think about it, there are people who might have just recently asked you and you were too busy. You know, think about going back to them and saying, hey, how are you doing? You know, do you still need some assistance, right? There are some people that I can think of, like 10 myself. I've had that same excuse. It happens to us all. So don't feel bad. And tomorrow is another day, right? We have another day, another opportunity. Again, as I mentioned, our new membership platform has a space for women just like you who folks need to hear from, right? People, unfortunately, especially executives, there aren't enough of us. We aren't as commonplace yet. So we need to help younger folks who are coming, mid-career people, understand that some of the challenges that they're going through are the same challenges we went through. As part of that isolation is you start to think, I am the only one, right? So providing that opportunity just to share, right? And you can make your own parameters. I love things like Calendly that say, here's, I've seen people put that right in the bottom of their email that say, if you want to, set up a meeting with me, and maybe you only give 3 times a month, but give people an opportunity that's not overwhelming to you, to get to you. And I promise you, the richness of those those exchanges. I benefit more, I think, from having conversations with folks who are reaching out to me for mentorship than they get. I'm hoping they get as good as I'm getting because it's an amazing exchange.
Wonderful. I love it. And Brenda, you've given us a lot to remember and think about for all levels here, whether you're an intern or whether you're a senior leader. So thank you very much for your insight today. It's been wonderful spending time with you. Be well, stay safe, and we'll be thinking
My pleasure.
Of you and your family.
Thank you so much. The same to you. This has been amazing. And thank you for everyone who joined today.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.